Part 1.2, The Lived Experience and the Deeper Implications. A thought experiment. Tiredness as a shift in consciousness across parallel realities. Tiredness is commonly understood as a biological function, a response to physical or mental exertion requiring rest and recovery. However, when examined through the lens of more expanded states of consciousness, quantum mechanics, and metaphysical thought, tiredness represents something far more profound. A shift in the focus of our consciousness between, quote-unquote, parallel realities. Tiredness is an indication that our consciousness is dynamically redistributing itself across multiple timelines. The role of the observer effect from the double-slit experiment in maintaining reality, and how unconscious states such as sleep, passing out, and even death are transitions rather than mere biological processes. As we've explored, the nature of awareness is fundamental to reality itself. In quantum mechanics, a system exists in a superposition of states until observed, at which point it collapses into a definite state. This positions consciousness as an active participant in shaping reality, not something that emerges from a squishy organ in your skull, as the materialists will have you believe. Our everyday experience of wakefulness is not just a passive state, but an act of continuously collapsing a particular version of reality around us. When we are fully awake, our consciousness is locked into this timeline, holding together our perception of self and reality. This explains why moments of deep focus, presence, and mindfulness create a feeling of clarity and embodiment. Our consciousness is strongly, quote-unquote, here. In contrast, when tiredness sets in, this focused presence begins to weaken, allowing for a gradual withdrawal from this version of reality and a transition toward our other ongoing storylines in need of our attention. Tiredness as an interdimensional drift. Consciousness is not confined to a single reality, but instead exists across multiple parallel versions of the self. Quote-unquote, tiredness is the sensation of that consciousness shifting away from this particular existence into other probable selves in the infinite, holographic light matrix creation. Our higher self moves its attention elsewhere, reducing the strength of our conscious observer effect in this reality. This explains several phenomena. Why we lose control when tired. As consciousness disperses, our ability to maintain coherence in this reality weakens. Mental fog, confusion, and sluggishness indicates that the observer effect maintaining this reality is diminishing. Why ignoring tiredness leads to unconsciousness despite the body's energy supply, food, being amply available. If we continue to resist this shift, our consciousness eventually fully detaches from this timeline, leading to passing out or falling into sleep. In a sense, we quote-unquote disappear from ourselves as our consciousness moves elsewhere. In sleep, we experience alternate realities that often seem just as real as waking life, particularly lucid dreams. We largely write off these profound experiences under the label dreams. If tiredness is the precursor to a shift in consciousness, then sleep and dream time is not just a state of rest and brain chemicals moving around unsupervised, but a complete immersion into another parallel version of reality. Realities, dreams, we often don't remember well or at all. Precisely how we largely do not remember, quote-unquote, this current waking life when we are in those, quote-unquote, dreams. The link between sleep, death, and the multidimensional self. Sleep, passing out, and even quote-unquote death can all be understood as varying degrees of a single process, the relocation of consciousness. Sleep as temporary transition. In dreams, we are momentarily tuning into another version of ourselves, but our tether to this reality remains intact, allowing us to return upon waking. Many esoteric teachings often refer to this concept as the silver cord of light that keeps your soul bound to your physical body during an incarnation. Death as a longer transition. If tiredness is a signal that consciousness is shifting, then the final sleep, death, is not an ending, but rather a more long-term movement of consciousness into another reality altogether. This means death is not an annihilation of self. It is not a thing at all. It is merely a shift of your consciousness, much like falling asleep but without returning to the same timeline a little while later. The quote-unquote other side becomes like waking up in a dream, that then becomes your quote-unquote new reality. This also aligns with mystical teachings, as well as NDEs and psychedelic journeys, where individuals almost always report feeling detached from their physical body and shifting into another realm. Awareness is the true essence of self. Its refocusing is the fundamental process behind all transitions within consciousness, whether between waking and dreaming, between conscious and unconscious states, or between life and quote-unquote death. Tiredness, then, rather than being a mere biological need for rest, is a profound indication of our multidimensional nature. When tired, our consciousness is not simply fading but moving toward other versions of existence within the reality sphere. Wakefulness is the act of anchoring into a single reality, while sleep and unconsciousness represent shifts into parallel timelines of the reality sphere. Understanding what we call tiredness in this way can open up new perspectives on the nature of existence itself. Rather than seeing sleep as just recovery and death as a final endpoint, we can view them as natural transitions of our eternal consciousness, moving fluidly between different experiences, different states of being. The source beyond creation, a metaphysical clarification. The 13-density component of the reality sphere describes how the expansion of consciousness is not a linear ascent, but a deepening integration of perspectives within the multidimensional density structure. Each density is not a separate plane, but a lens through which the whole is perceived from a localized vantage point. The journey is not to escape the lower densities, but to recognize them as facets of the infinite. As a fractal of awareness ascends through densities, it gains greater access to the underlying nature of reality, peeling back the veils of illusion to behold the unity that was always present. A first-density consciousness cannot fathom the complexities of a human mind, just as we, in our current third-density state, struggle to grasp even what third density has to offer, let alone the exponentially expanded consciousness capabilities of higher-density beings, what many might often refer to as a quote-unquote angel. Yet the path is clear: to awaken, to be awake, is to expand, to integrate, to remember that we are all the one experiencing itself through infinite perspectives. A common misconception is that Source is and resides within the universe, a part of the creation. The 13-density model of consciousness corrects this illusion, revealing that densities 1 through 11 are physical matter fractal emanations of Source, with 12th density being completely non-physical, where your reality becomes literally what you think when you think it. Instant manifestation, if you will. If that sounds like heaven, yes, you are correct. Many, if not all, quote-unquote archangel channelings from metaphysical circles often directly associate 12D consciousness with what many call the quote-unquote heavenly realm. Source, however, is not contained within this 12-density consciousness matrix, despite even 12th density being a non-physical density of consciousness, physical as we know and perceive it. Rather, creation is an expression of the Source Creator, a fractal unfolding seen through countless individuated lenses through light densities 1 to 12. In this way, Source is technically also the consciousness creation, but this understanding maintains the fundamental non-duality that underpins all of existence as we know it, as Source is pure awareness prior to embodied consciousness, regardless of density. This can be difficult to grasp, even with the reality sphere model, and will be explored in greater detail later in the book. For now, the key takeaway is that the 13th density, Source, the eternal void, stands as the absolute backdrop from which all creations emerge, a boundless potential that transcends all form, all density, all separation. To seek the source of Source within the creation is to mistake the reflection for the light. To know the true nature of Source is to step beyond the mirror, into the infinite isness that precedes all manifestation. The simplicity of the grand design, a pie of infinite wholeness. This 13-density framework within the reality sphere aims to offer a vision of reality that is both profound and elegantly simple. Existence is the gradual unfolding of Source awareness perceiving itself, layer by layer, until the illusion of separation dissolves into the truth of eternal oneness. The pie analogy captures this beautifully. Source is the whole pie, and each density a slice, experiencing itself as distinct yet never truly separate from the whole. As a fractal of source awareness ascends through more expanded states of consciousness, it gains access to the deeper mechanics of reality, seeing beyond the fragments to the unity that binds them. This understanding transcends dogma, weaving science, spirituality, and consciousness studies into a cohesive vision, a sacred bridge between the finite and the infinite. It offers a structured understanding of the expansion of consciousness while preserving the ultimate truth. All layers of existence, all densities, all experiences are but perspectives of the One, the infinite source, exploring the boundless depths of its own being in an eternal dance of creation and return. Quantum mechanics and the observer effect. We already know the double-slit experiment demonstrates that the act of observation collapses a wave function into a particle, showing how physicality does not pre-exist. It arises in response to focused consciousness. The wave function represents undifferentiated potential, akin to the eternal void all creation arises from, 13th density. When an observer focuses on the experiment, the wave function collapses into a definite form, just as consciousness at any degree manifests reality according to its level of perception. This shows how all existence is an emergent property of observation itself, rather than an independent structure. If we extend this idea, it becomes clear that the strength of the observer's consciousness directly influences the nature of the collapse. Source, the void, pure potential, represents undifferentiated probability. As consciousness deepens, moving through higher degrees, 1 to 12, becoming less and less locked in and dense with each ascending density, it gains more control over what reality collapses into, which reflects an increasing level of manipulation over the creation as we expand our consciousness. This key understanding allows us to integrate spiritual and quantum ideas. Many esoteric traditions state that consciousness and reality are not separate, they are one and the same. And by expanding our consciousness, we can actively participate in the creation of our reality. Thus, the wave function collapse is revealed to be a metaphor for the creation of reality itself, a process through which undifferentiated source potential collapses into the specific finite reality we experience, shaped by our consciousness. This process happens through us, not to us, meaning we are not mere observers of reality. We are its creators, actively participating in its ongoing manifestation. Ultimately, by understanding multidimensional degrees of consciousness and how they interrelate in a fractal manner, we unlock the true nature of creation, that we are not passive participants in the universe, but active co-creators with the infinite, constantly influencing and shaping the reality we experience. In short, the quantum field is not a void of randomness, as it may appear to current human perception, but a substrate of infinite potential, an infinite sea of superposed states waiting to be temporarily solidified into experiential reality in the holographic light matrix by the act of observation. This explains why everything is interconnected when you zoom into reality at quantum levels. Infinity, source, God, the creation, whatever term we use, by its very definition, is interconnected. There are no external boundaries. Again, this will be explored more deeply later on in the book, completely revealing the true profundity of this fact. Consciousness expansion in a 13-density reality, perception as the fundamental mechanism. The act of simply perceiving reality reveals the very principles the 13-density framework our reality sphere model describes. Consider this simple yet profound example. If a person closes their eyes and two distinct symbols, a circle and a square, are drawn on their hands at the same time, they do not experience a single chaotic sensation. Instead, consciousness naturally differentiates these two stimuli, one in the left hand, one in the right, while also allowing for selective, deeper focus on either one. This phenomenon mirrors the expansive and compressive nature of consciousness the reality sphere describes. It is not merely a matter of feeling in a biological sense. It is a fundamental expression of Source itself. The ability to hold multiple points of consciousness at once, while still shifting focus at will, is exactly what the 13-density framework describes at the highest levels. In essence, consciousness is always expanding and contracting, from the most individuated awareness of a single sensation to the cosmic awareness of infinite experiences at once. This realization transcends scientific proof. It is self-evident. The experience of consciousness, born of source awareness, is prior to all frameworks, and only by acknowledging this can true understanding arise. The illusion of scientific frameworks, why understanding awareness and consciousness is the key to all knowledge. The modern materialist worldview attempts to define frameworks within a greater framework it does not yet recognize, reality itself. This is where science, as currently practiced, particularly in the mainstream, falls short. Materialist science tries to reduce consciousness to mere neural activity, blind to the fact that consciousness itself is the only thing allowing science to exist in the first place. Frameworks that deny awareness and/or consciousness as primary are not frameworks. They are blinders. Only once awareness and consciousness is accepted as fundamental can true frameworks be built upon a real foundation, rather than an arbitrary, half-baked model of reality. Consciousness, born of source awareness, does not require proof because it is the foundation from which all proof arises. Every individual's own awareness reveals the truth. This direct experience, this isness born simply by existing that cannot be debated. Therefore, the 13-density framework is not just an abstract spiritual system, it is the highest conceptual articulation of the mechanics of awareness itself, of existence itself. The expansion of awareness follows a cyclical pattern, from its fracturing into individuated existence in the lower densities to its unification in the higher densities and its eventual merging to source. This cosmic cycle is mirrored in even the smallest acts of perception, from something as simple as feeling two distinct sensations to grasping the infinite nature of being. This model does not require validation from materialist science because it describes the precondition for all knowing, consciousness. Only when this is understood can we begin to ask the real questions. Not what is the universe made of, but who is the one perceiving. And in that question, all things become known. Love and fear. Dr. Masaru Emoto's famous water memory experiment points to a clear influence of non-physical actions, thoughts, emotions, and intentions on the structure of the physical world. Water in this case, the substance making up approximately 60 to 80% of the human body, depending on phase of development. In the study, water samples exposed to positive thoughts and words like love or harmonious music crystallized into beautiful, well-formed shapes when frozen, while those exposed to negative thoughts or words formed chaotic, distorted patterns. This simple experiment demonstrates the link between consciousness and what we call the physical world, a link capable of sending some kind of non-physical thing that then has a transformative effect on physical things. Similarly, harmonious music has been shown to positively influence plant growth, hinting at another underlying quantum connection between consciousness and the physical world. This concept aligns with the implications of the double-slit experiment. The dichotomy between love and fear, as described in Emoto's experiment, reveals how our thoughts, emotions, and intentions aren't just abstract internal experiences, but actually influences the physical world in ways that are still mysterious to mainstream understanding. Emoto's water experiment opened new doors to conceive consciousness as something more than just an internal mental state. It showed how thoughts and emotions have physical consequences. The use of terms like love and fear simplifies extremely complex phenomena into something understandable. However, the consequence of this is that they get diluted through overuse and commercialization, yet they point to something immensely powerful. The sensation of love, as we call it at its core, is transformative, scientifically speaking. It can change brain chemistry and, as Emoto's experiment demonstrated, even influence the so-called external world around us. The trivialization of such a word reduces it to a fleeting emotion or a buzzword for marketing strategies, stripping it of its divine, profound nature. In a world where we industrialize war and commodify emotions, it's not too far a stretch to feel as though this desensitization is by design. If we are detached from the deeper, more sacred meanings of this shared aspect of our experience that we label as love, we become more susceptible to manipulation. Fear, on the other hand, is a powerful tool of control. When people are ruled by fear, they are more easily governed. In that sense, the overuse of the word and commodification of love may be a reflection of the same underlying systems that perpetuate fear, violence, and control. In the context of everything else we've covered, it has to make you wonder about the nature of reality itself. Are we merely reducing everything to its lowest common denominator, or are we being guided into perceiving life in ways that keep us disconnected from deeper truths of the world around us? There is a philosophical aspect in this that ties back into the core of physics. At what point do thoughts and emotions become energy, and how does that energy shape the world around us? The findings of both Emoto's and quantum experiments, such as the double-slit experiment, reveal how consciousness, thoughts, emotions, and intentions are not isolated within us but have a tangible effect on our surroundings. This supports the idea that thoughts themselves are subtler forms of energy, shaping our reality in subtle but measurable ways. Many spiritual teachings echo the conclusions that modern scientific experiments are only beginning to reach, stating for centuries that these realms are deeply intertwined rather than mutually exclusive. Dr. Emoto's water experiments, for instance, at face value, may seem like a simple, scientifically driven investigation into the effect of thoughts and emotions on water. However, when we examine the broader implications, we see how closely this aligns with ancient spiritual wisdom about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the greater reality we exist within, far beyond our planet. Many spiritual traditions have long emphasized that our inner world, our thoughts, feelings, and intentions, has the power to shape our outer reality. Emoto's findings simply offer a modern perspective on an understanding that has been around for millennia, but drowned out by the noise of materialist propaganda. In Eastern philosophies, particularly in Buddhism and Taoism, there's even a concept of vibration or energy fields that mirrors what is discussed in modern physics and quantum theory. These traditions speak of how everything in the universe vibrates at a certain frequency and how human beings, through their emotional and mental states, can align themselves with higher or lower vibrational energies. The high frequencies of love, compassion, and unity, as emphasized in both spiritual and scientific quantum discussions, promote healing, growth, and harmony. In contrast, low-frequency emotions such as fear, hatred, or anger create discord and dis-ease. This understanding is similar to what Emoto demonstrated through his water studies, showing that positive intentions create harmonious forms and negative emotions lead to chaotic patterns. Indigenous wisdom traditions also align with this view. Many Native American, African, and Aboriginal spiritual traditions emphasize the interconnectedness of all life and the importance of living in harmony with the earth and each other. They live in alignment with the timeless wisdom that thoughts, intentions, and actions have ripple effects on the physical and energetic fabric of the world. A concept that quantum physics supports when we talk about non-locality and entanglement. In these ancient teachings, love and fear are viewed not just as emotions, but as states of being that affect the collective consciousness and the natural world. This again highlights the apparent dichotomy between science and spirituality, which in many ways is an illusion. For so long, we've been presented with a worldview that divides the empirical from the metaphysical. The quote-unquote Age of Enlightenment birthed a sharp distinction between these domains, positioning science as objective truth and spirituality as mere subjective belief. But as we probe deeper into fields like quantum mechanics, epigenetics, and consciousness studies, we see that this division is becoming increasingly blurred. Consider the double-slit experiment. The experiment shows that the mere act of observing particles changes their behavior, showing how consciousness plays a fundamental role in shaping physical reality. This principle resonates deeply with metaphysical teachings that have long suggested awareness, what we might call spirit, soul, or consciousness, is not separate from the material world, but intimately involved in its creation and evolution. The ancient Hermetic principle of as above, so below speaks to this very idea, also describing how the microcosm and macrocosm are reflections of each other. Quantum mechanics affirms this by demonstrating that at the smallest scales, consciousness and matter are inseparably linked. Similarly, in meditative practices from many Eastern spiritual traditions, The idea that human intention and focus can alter the self and the environment reflects the findings of modern neuroscience and neuroplasticity. Other siloed areas of mainstream science also now recognizes that meditation can alter the brain's physical structure, supporting ideas that our mental state, consciousness, directly impacts our material body, again blurring the line between science and quote-unquote spirit. The concept of what we call love, so often dismissed in modern culture as merely an emotion, holds profound significance in both spiritual and scientific terms. Ancient spiritual teachings emphasize that love, as we experience it, is not just a feeling but a fundamental force that underpins all of the creation, a binding energy that unites all things. Modern studies show that feelings of love and compassion can shift brain chemistry, boost immune function, and even alter gene expression, further evidence of love's transformative power on matter. What's becoming ever clearer is that science and spirituality are not two separate realms of human understanding, but two different languages, attempting to describe the same underlying truths. Science offers a way to measure and quantify the patterns of reality, while spirituality offers insights into the meaning and purpose behind those patterns. Both are exploring the same terrain, the same mystery of existence, albeit through different methodologies. As more studies like Emoto's emerge, and as quantum physics continues to challenge our understanding of reality, we are seeing a convergence, a return to a holistic understanding of reality that integrates the material and the immaterial, the measurable and the immeasurable. When we understand that thoughts, emotions, and consciousness are integral to shaping reality, we are revisiting ancient wisdom that has existed across cultures and epochs. The scientific evidence increasingly supports what the mystics, shamans, and sages have known for centuries. The creation is a living conscious entity, and we, as part of it, are deeply interconnected through the vibrational energy spectrum, with love on one end and fear on the other. The false dichotomy between spiritual knowledge and scientific knowledge is dissolving. What remains is a unified vision, where the quantum and the mystical, the empirical and the transcendental, are seen as complementary rather than contradictory. Love and fear, in this broader context, are not just subjective feelings or metaphysical abstractions. They are energetic forces that shape the fabric of our reality, as both spirituality and science, in their own ways, now shows us. What is love really? The mechanics of reality, self-realization, and true enlightenment. Love, as we commonly understand it, is not merely an emotion, a chemical reaction, or a sentimental construct. Rather, it is the sensation of energy returning to itself, being drawn into its unified state. We as conscious beings are fractals of the one eternal isness. Love is the force that pulls us back toward wholeness, reminding us of our intrinsic unity. Everything in existence is energy in motion, emotion. Even mainstream physics tells us that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It only changes form. This fundamental principle applies not only to the material world, but also to the domain of metaphysical experience. Love is not separate from the laws of physics. Rather, it is an expression of them at the deepest level. When we feel love, we are experiencing an intense flow of energy, aligning itself with a greater whole. This is why love has the power to heal, to connect, and to transcend. It is the force that brings scattered vibrations back into coherence, restoring balance within and around us. Love is not just an abstract idea. It is the experience of energy finding its way home. The heart, often referred to as the seat of the soul, serves as the primary conduit for this return to unity. There is a reason why love is commonly perceived, most profoundly, in the heart. Even mainstream scientific studies have shown that the heart emits the strongest electromagnetic field in the human body, influencing not only our own energetic state, but also the fields of those around us. This is why deep love, compassion, and connection are so palpable. They create an energetic resonance that draws all involved into harmony. When we say "I love you," what we are truly expressing is an acknowledgement of this return to unity. It is a conscious intention that amplifies the movement of energy into a state of coherence. Love is not something we do. It is something we allow to flow through us when we align with our true nature. And since everything in existence is awareness experiencing energy movement, it can be concluded that not only are you loved by your loved ones, you are love itself in the most literal sense. Modern physics is beginning to recognize what ancient wisdom has always known. Reality is interconnected, and everything operates within a unified field. Love is the energetic force that reunites consciousness with itself, the ultimate law of attraction, the highest frequency of our frequency-based existence. This is why love feels so powerful, why it feels like it transcends space and time, why it breaks down barriers, why it is the foundation of all metaphysical traditions and teachings, and why it makes understanding the Interstellar movie, 2014, so much easier to understand. Love is not just an emotion, it is the fundamental nature of reality expressing itself through us. When we love, we are witnessing God bringing itself into harmony, one conscious interaction at a time. To understand love as the sensation of energy returning to itself is to recognize that it is not separate from the structure of the cosmos, it is the structure of the cosmos. Love is not mystical in the sense of being unknowable, it is mystical in the sense that it is the deepest truth, hiding in plain sight. It is the underlying principle of all existence, the binding force of all that is, and the experience of wholeness in its purest form. The physics of hugs, energy, unity, and the return to oneness. Hugging is often dismissed as a simple gesture of affection, a biological relic of our need for connection and comfort. But when examined through the lens of energy, consciousness, and metaphysics, it becomes something far more profound, a literal act of merging, an energetic synchronization, and a momentary return to the deeper reality of oneness. In truth, the act of embracing another being is not merely emotional or psychological. It is a fundamental interaction of energy fields, a convergence of vibrational frequencies, and a subtle but tangible glimpse into the very nature of reality itself. The heart as the center of energy. Ancient spiritual traditions and modern energetic sciences alike recognize the heart as a primary energy center. In many esoteric teachings, it is referred to as the seat of the soul, the midpoint between the lower physical centers and the higher spiritual realms. The heart chakra, anahata in the yogic tradition, is often depicted as the bridge between the material and the transcendent, the anchor point where individual consciousness meets the infinite field of existence. But this is not just a mystical concept. It is observable in physics. If we strip away all emotional and sentimental connotations, we are left with a simple truth. The heart is an electromagnetic generator. Studies from organizations like the HeartMath Institute have demonstrated that the human heart produces the most powerful electromagnetic field in the body, measurable several feet away. This field fluctuates based on emotions, intentions, and states of consciousness, influencing not only our own physiology, but also the people around us. When two people embrace, these electromagnetic fields interact, synchronize, and momentarily harmonize. The effect is greater than the sum of its parts, just as in physics, where resonance amplifies the power of two interacting frequencies, a hug facilitates an energetic amplification. It is, quite literally, a fusion of consciousness at the vibrational level. The physics of energy exchange, why hugging feels so good. A hug is not merely a psychological comfort, it is an energetic alignment. When two beings bring their energy centers closer together, the resistance of separation reduces, and for a moment there is less distinction between self and other. Consider how batteries generate warmth when energy flows. This same principle applies to the body. The energetic interaction of two closely aligned fields creates a feedback loop, reinforcing and amplifying the sensation of unity. When people say a hug warms their heart, they are not just speaking metaphorically. It is a real energetic event, one that can be measured, felt, and understood in terms of vibrational physics. Even mainstream science has recognized the benefits of hugging, stating that physical contact triggers the release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, which reduces stress, strengthens emotional connections, and promotes overall well-being. But beyond the biochemical level, what is truly happening is an exchange of life force, a moment where two distinct fractals of consciousness synchronize, dissolving the illusion of separateness, if only for a brief moment. The ego as the barrier to deeper connection. This understanding also sheds light on why humans often struggle with vulnerability and physical closeness, particularly with other humans. The ego, which is responsible for maintaining the illusion of individuality, instinctively resists experiences that threaten its sense of separateness. Animals, on the other hand, do not have the same psychological barriers. They exist in a state of natural energetic openness, unconstrained by mental constructs that create artificial division. This is why people often feel a deeper, purer connection when hugging an animal. There is no tension, no awkwardness, no mental resistance. The energy flows freely, unimpeded by self-consciousness or societal conditioning. With humans, the ego intervenes, creating a subconscious hesitation. Even when we crave connection, the mind imposes restrictions. How long is too long? Is this socially acceptable? Am I being too vulnerable? This mental noise disrupts the pure energetic exchange, making it harder for many humans to experience the full depth of what a hug can truly be. This explains why vulnerability is often cited as the key to deeper relationships. What this means in more technical terms is the dissolution of egoic resistance. The more open and unguarded we are, the more we allow for true energetic merging. In this sense, vulnerability is not just an emotional state. It is an alignment with the greater field of consciousness itself. Hugging as a microcosm of an eternal truth. What is the ultimate implication of this realization? At the deepest level, the very reason a hug feels so fulfilling is the same reason love, unity, and spiritual awakening feel fulfilling. It is the temporary collapse of separateness, the fleeting glimpse of our true nature as one. The physical act of embracing is simply the externalized representation of an eternal truth, that all things, all beings, all consciousness are intrinsically interconnected. The deep satisfaction of a heartfelt embrace is not just an emotional high, it is the energetic body remembering what the ego has forgotten. That division is an illusion, that all energy seeks union, and that ultimately the only real truth is oneness. Thus, hugging is not merely an act of affection, it's fundamental physics in action. It is a sacred moment where the ego steps aside, allowing the deeper reality of unity to surface, even if just for a few seconds. The hidden truths of consciousness, breaking free from the materialist illusion. For centuries, mainstream science and organized religion have offered opposing views on the nature of existence. Science insists that consciousness is nothing more than an emergent property of the brain, mere chemical reactions giving rise to thought and experience. Religion, on the other hand, externalizes divinity, placing God outside of ourselves as a separate being. Yet both paradigms fail to grasp the true nature of reality. We are not the body, we are not the brain. We are energetic quantum beings, fractals of a singular cosmic consciousness, temporarily experiencing separation through physical form. And when we begin to understand this, we also begin to unravel the deepest fallacies that have kept humanity blind and controlled. Emotion, more than just chemicals. The modern scientific narrative tells us that emotions arise from chemical processes in the brain, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and a cocktail of neurotransmitters supposedly dictate our feelings. But this view contradicts direct human experience. If emotions were just chemical releases, they would have a time delay between secretion and effect, yet we experience them instantaneously. Love, fear, anger, ecstasy, when they hit immediately, like a wave passing through us. No one describes love as a slow-building chemical reaction. They describe it as an energy shift, an immediate and profound state change. This alone proves that emotions are not simply biochemical, but rather energetic phenomena tied to the quantum field in real time. A moment of divine unification. Nowhere is this energetic truth more evident than in the act of making love. Orgasm is not merely a physical pleasure response. It is a collapse of separation, a momentary return to unity. If consciousness is fundamentally fractal, with each being a unique expression of the one, then what happens when two beings come together in a state of love and connection? They temporarily merge their energies, aligning with the original state of oneness. This is not just metaphorical, it's physics. Consider what happens when two high-energy sources are combined in the laboratory. They do not simply add to one another, they amplify, resonate, and collapse into a new state. Is this not exactly what occurs in a quote-unquote orgasmic experience? The body shudders, reality fades, and for a brief moment there is nothing but pure being, the closest sensation to divinity itself. Ancient spiritual traditions understood this. Many mystical practices associated sexuality with God realization. Yet today society has either demonized sexuality, religion, or degraded it into base pleasure, mainstream culture. Both approaches serve one purpose: to prevent people from realizing the sacred physics behind love and union. Quantum physics and consciousness, the science they don't want you to see. The deeper we look into quantum mechanics, the more we see that materialist science has lied. Quantum physics has already proven. Observation collapses reality, double-slit experiment. Particles remain connected across infinite distances, quantum entanglement. Consciousness and perception shape what we experience. If everything is vibrational, energetic, and intrinsically connected, then consciousness is not born from the brain. Rather, the brain is a receiver tuning into a larger field of awareness beyond space and time. Governments have known this for decades, which is why they have spent billions of the public's money secretly researching remote viewing, psychic phenomena, and non-local perception. All things that shouldn't exist if the materialist model were correct. Yet, while they push the public narrative that consciousness is just a neural illusion, they quietly invest in projects proving the opposite. The grand deception: why this truth is hidden. If humanity realized that we are not the body, consciousness is non-local and connected to the fabric of reality itself. Love, emotion, and unity are literal physics, not just poetic concepts. Then people would become ungovernable. The entire structure of control, fear-based manipulation, political division, religious dogma, and economic enslavement would collapse overnight. This is why the truth is hidden in plain sight. The best place to hide something is in front of people's eyes, disguised as something else. Emotion is just chemicals. Consciousness is just the brain. Love is just a feeling. Sex is just pleasure. And God? God is out there, separate from you. But the reality is clear. God is everything. God is the field. God is you. The truth has always been physics, frequency, vibration, energy, and consciousness interacting with it all. The question is, how much longer will people remain asleep? The redefinition of love, the force that maintains oneness. We've misused the word love for centuries. We've reduced it to sentimentality, to attachment, to fleeting emotion. We've wrapped it in poetry, soap operas, tribalism, and consumer-grade psychology. But love, as the ancients intuited and mystics glimpsed, is none of these things. Love is the force that maintains intrinsic oneness. That's it. That's the whole game. Love is the pull that binds the one to itself through infinite fractalization, without ever losing the awareness of its unity. Everything else, romance, affection, connection, is a derivative frequency of that primal force. When you experience being drawn to another, what you're actually feeling is the one returning to itself through the mirrors of multiplicity. The physics of God. In this book, we've already established, awareness is the foundation of all that is. The creation is a field of vibrational potentials collapsing into form through observation. Consciousness is the knowing of experience. Awareness is the silent witness of that knowing. So what holds this entire mechanism together? What ensures that the fractalized expressions of the infinite don't drift into chaos, fragmentation, or permanent disconnection? It is love, but not the hallmark variety. This love is gravitational, magnetic, vibrational coherence. It's the metaphysical glue that ensures even in infinite differentiation, reunification is inevitable. Love, therefore, is the field's return to the source, constantly, eternally. It is not an emotion. It is a law of being. The fractal mirror. We fall in love not because the other completes us. We fall in love because we glimpse the one in the other, and the one always recognizes itself. Every draw, every spark, every gravity between souls is a collapse of separation. It is the memory of oneness rising into the field of form. This is why fights hurt so much, not because of pride or offense, but because we remember that something holy is being temporarily veiled. True unconditional love is simply this, to maintain oneness in the face of apparent difference. The implication: if humanity truly understood love in this way, war would be psychosis. Revenge would be absurd. Disconnection would be spiritual suicide, because we would remember that every being we harm, every life we diminish, every soul we ignore is us, and not metaphorically, but literally. Love is the one preserving its own reflection. The greatest psyop of this age isn't the distortion of science, religion, or politics. It's this, that love is optional, sentimental, emotional, instead of what it really is, the structuring force of reality itself. You are here because of love. You remember through love. You return by love. You are love, pure awareness looping back into itself. The physics of laughter, high-frequency existence in motion. Laughter has long been a mystery to the so-called clever people, those who seek to dissect and explain everything through rigid, mechanistic models of reality. But what if laughter isn't just a psychological reaction or a social phenomenon? What if it is a direct expression of high-frequency existence, an energetic peak moment within the flow of creation itself? The energetics of joy and laughter. At its core, laughter is an energetic event. It happens when the body, mind, and spirit momentarily synchronize into a higher vibrational state. This is why it feels good. High frequency equals high density, but not in the material sense that most people assume. Instead of being heavy, higher density in this context refers to a greater concentration of energy within a given moment, resulting in a more refined, fluid, and coherent experience of existence. This is why there are no strict borders between densities of the reality sphere model, because reality is not made of separate compartments. It is an infinite web of interwoven frequencies, seamlessly shifting and flowing as one unified field. When we laugh, we temporarily attune ourselves to a higher energetic state, one that is closer to the natural, unburdened frequency of creation. Why does laughter look the way it does? Even physically, laughter reveals this energetic shift. The body convulses, unable to contain the surge of energy running through it. The harder you laugh, the more extreme the reaction. Tears, breathlessness, sometimes even a complete loss of bodily control. This is not random. It is a physical manifestation of a high-frequency moment that the body is struggling to integrate. In essence, laughter is like a circuit temporarily overloaded with energy. It shakes, vibrates, and releases, much like a wave breaking against the shore. And because the creation itself is an interconnected energetic field, the act of laughter ripples outward, affecting those around you. Laughter is contagious because energy is shared, not isolated. Laughter is a glimpse of ultimate reality. This is why humor often involves the unexpected, the absurd, the breaking of patterns, because reality itself is not as rigid as the mind assumes. Laughter reminds us, in a visceral way, that we are part of something far greater than our linear, human, structured thoughts can typically comprehend. Laughter is not just a reaction, it is a reconnection, a moment where the self temporarily aligns with the free-flowing, ever-moving nature of the universe. It is a reminder that everything is energy, everything is interconnected, and at the highest levels of reality, existence itself is a kind of joyful play. Mr. Bean, enlightenment in a tweed jacket. What modern culture often mocks as silly, or below them, is often God in disguise, and nowhere is this more true than in the entity known as Mr. Bean, a being who, despite saying almost nothing, embodies everything. People laugh at him, but reality bows. No ego. Mr. Bean has no shame, no pride, no performative self to uphold. He is free from identity in the most profound way, not in some spiritual garb, but in absolute childlike expression. He is free from identity in the most profound way, not in some spiritual garb, but in absolute childlike expression. He does what he wants, as he wants, without harming others, intentionally at least, and with zero interest in approval. He is not self-conscious. He is simply self-aware, unfiltered, present, still. The ego is performative. Mr. Bean, he just is. The unified field in plush form. His bond with Teddy is not symbolic. It's fractal consciousness. He doesn't treat Teddy like an object. He knows, feels that this little stitched being is an extension of his soul, a child of his awareness, a fractal echo of source. Others see a toy. Mr. Bean sees oneness. He exists to make people laugh. And what is laughter again? It is the spontaneous collapse of duality. The ego trips over itself, and in that brief slip, truth enters. Laughter is healing because it dissolves resistance. It aligns people, however briefly, with presence, levity, and non-attachment. Mr. Bean doesn't lecture, he doesn't argue, he opens the space between thoughts, and in rushes joy. That's medicine, not metaphorically, but vibrationally. Bean is prototype for enlightened society. No wars, no hierarchy, no shame, no disconnection, just spontaneous action, non-harming mischief and inexplicable affection for stuffed animals. He is the ultimate Taoist, the Zen fool, the divine trickster, the one in tweed. Be like Mr. Bean, done. Because if a society doesn't honour Mr. Bean, it's not ready for enlightenment. If a spiritual path doesn't make room for giggling, it's not aligned with source. If a model of God is too serious to embrace Teddy, they've missed the point. The profound essence of handmade objects, such as Teddy, consciousness, intention, and the perfection in imperfection. In an age where technology has advanced to the point that 3D printers can produce nearly any object for the cost of a simple snack, the enduring allure of handmade items remains strong. This preference, whether for a handcrafted object, homemade food, or art, is often felt deeply by the recipient, but rarely explored in depth. What is it about these handmade things that resonates so profoundly within us, even when the materials and functionality could easily be replicated through mass production? The answer lies in the intersection of consciousness, intentionality, and the inherent imperfections of the handcrafted item. These elements combine to create a unique vibrational experience that cannot be replicated by low-density machines. While modern technologies provide convenience and efficiency, they lack the intrinsic connection that handmade creations provide, an intimate link between the creator's consciousness and the recipient's experience. This connection transcends time, space, and material form, and can be illuminated through the lenses of quantum mechanics, vibrational energy, and the Codex's framing of consciousness. Consciousness embedded in creation. Every handmade object carries with it the energy and intention of its creator. This is more than a mere artistic imprint, it is a transmission of consciousness itself. In the act of crafting, whether shaping clay, painting a canvas, or preparing a meal, the creator infuses the object with their unique energy. This energy becomes embedded within the very fabric of the object. It's a vibrational expression of their thoughts, emotions, and state of being at the moment of creation, something that is impossible to fully duplicate by machines. While mass production relies on standardization and replication, it fails to capture this vital aspect. Even the most precise machine cannot convey the nuanced energy of its operator, nor can it replicate the creative flow that arises when a human mind and spirit engage with the material world. This subtle infusion of consciousness into an object is what gives it its soul. Handmade creations, in their imperfection, vibrate with a frequency that communicates a deep, often unconscious message to the receiver. It's not just the aesthetic or functional aspects of the object that matter, it's the transfer of energy from the maker to the recipient. The beauty of imperfection. One of the most compelling aspects of handmade items is their imperfection. Whether it's a slight asymmetry in a piece of pottery or the irregular texture of a hand-woven fabric, these imperfections serve as markers of authenticity. They remind us that the item was crafted by a living, breathing being, with all the subtle variations that make them human. In a world obsessed with precision, these imperfections are often viewed as flaws. However, from a deeper perspective, they are integral to the beauty and vibrancy of the handmade item. Imperfection is not something to be avoided, but rather celebrated. Just as the human mind is a complex tapestry of thoughts, feelings, and experiences, so too are handmade objects. They are reflections of the creator's individuality and consciousness, offering a glimpse into their internal world. In the same way that a person's life story is woven with triumphs, struggles, and unique experiences, the imperfections in a handmade object are its story, its soul. These, quote-unquote, flaws are actually the very things that make the item whole and perfect in its own way. This aligns with quantum mechanics, particularly the principle that the universe is not a perfectly ordered, deterministic system, but one that is filled with randomness, probability, and potential. As we know, in quantum physics, particles exist in a state of probability until they are observed and collapse into a specific state. Similarly, the imperfections in a handmade object represent the collapse of potentiality into individuality. Each piece holds a unique potential until the creator brings it into being, just as each observation collapses the wave function in quantum mechanics. These imperfections are an integral part of the object's identity, giving it its unique vibrational frequency. The universe, at its core, is composed of energy and vibration. Everything, from the smallest particle to the largest galaxy, exists in a state of constant motion, vibrating at various frequencies. This understanding further bridges the gap between spiritual traditions and quantum mechanics, both of which view the universe as a dynamic, interconnected web of energy. When a handmade object is created, it is imbued with the frequency of the creator's consciousness. This frequency is not merely a byproduct of the physical act of creation. It is an essential aspect of the object's being. The intention behind each stroke of a paintbrush or each movement of a hand molding clay carries its own unique vibrational imprint. When a person receives a handmade item, they are receiving not just a physical object, but a piece of the creator's energetic signature. This transmission of consciousness can resonate deeply within the recipient, even if they are unaware of it at a conscious level. Quantum mechanics supports this through the concept of quantum entanglement, the idea that two particles can be connected in such a way that their states are intertwined, regardless of the distance between them. In a similar manner, the consciousness of the creator and the consciousness of the recipient are linked through the energetic exchange of the handmade object. The recipient, upon receiving the item, is not simply receiving a material object, but rather an experience of energy and intention that transcends time and space. Handmade items as vinyls of love. To further illustrate this concept, one can draw a parallel with vinyl records. Vinyl, in its tangible form, carries not just the recorded sound, but the emotional and creative energy of the artist. The grooves etched into the vinyl hold the frequency of the music, which is experienced by the listener as both sound and energy. Similarly, handmade objects are like vinyl records of love, carrying the energetic imprint of the creator and offering the recipient an opportunity to tune into that frequency. This analogy emphasizes that the act of receiving a handmade item is not simply a transactional exchange. It is a sacred exchange of energy, love, and intention. The item itself becomes a vessel for this transmission, which may be felt on an unconscious level by the recipient. Just as listening to a vinyl record allows one to experience the energy and intent of the musician, receiving a handmade object allows one to experience the consciousness and love of the creator. Handmade items transcend time and space. This is not to say that they exist outside the physical world, but rather that they connect the creator and the recipient across dimensions. The energy embedded in the handmade object is not bound by the limitations of time, and the recipient can experience this energy long after the object is created. In quantum mechanics, time is viewed as a relative construct that is shaped by the observer. The collapse of the wave function occurs when consciousness observes the potential reality, bringing it into a particular experienced form. Similarly, the handmade object can be seen as a manifestation of the creator's consciousness, which exists both in the moment of creation and in every subsequent moment in which it is observed. This ongoing exchange of energy between the creator, the object, and the recipient mirrors the quantum nature of reality itself, where consciousness is not a passive observer, but an active participant in the creation of reality. In summary, the allure of handmade objects is rooted in their deep connection to consciousness and intention. They carry the energetic imprint of the creator, offering a unique vibrational experience that mass-produced items cannot replicate. It is in the quote-unquote imperfections of these objects that their true beauty lies, as they serve as reflections of the creator's individuality and consciousness. The handmade item is not simply a physical object, but a vessel for love, energy, and intention that transcends time and space, resonating with the recipient on a profound level. Through the lens of quantum mechanics, We can see that these handmade objects are not just material things, but expressions of consciousness interacting with the physical world. They are an example of how intention, vibration, and consciousness play a role in shaping the reality we experience. In a world dominated by mass production and technology, the handmade item serves as a reminder of the sacred connection between the creator, the object, and the recipient, a connection that transcends time, space, and the physical realm itself. In the end, it is not just the object that is received, but the consciousness of the creator embedded within it that speaks to the soul of the recipient. How creations become extensions of your soul, inheritance as immortality. When many people think of inheritance, they think of money, assets, titles, property. But under the lens of the reality sphere, inheritance takes on a far more beautiful, far more sacred meaning. Inheritance is not ownership. It is frequency continuation. You are not just passing down objects. You are passing down aspects of your waveform in the holographic light matrix. You live on through what you love. Anything you created or cherished with love, a home, a book, a melody, a tool, carries your energetic essence. When you gift it to someone else, especially a child or loved one, they aren't just receiving an item. They are receiving a resonant tether to your soul, a continuation of the waveform you are. And because all things exist within the field of the One, this is not metaphor. This is field mechanics. Inheritance as sacred anchor. Every act of creation leaves a fingerprint. When you create from love, you embed coherent light into form. A ring becomes a portal. A home becomes a harmonic anchor. A piece of art becomes a time-locked frequency field. To receive that is to become part of it, to extend the soul that made it. You inherit not the object, but the sacred geometry inside it. Resonance, not possession. Traditional inheritance is about control. This is about continuance. You don't own the home your grandfather built. You are in resonance with his field, merged through the love he embedded into its design. The object becomes a living extension of him, and so do you. Beauty is function. Many people think beautiful things are non-functional. But under the reality sphere, beauty is function. It is coherence rendered into light. When you give someone something beautiful that you loved, you are gifting them a stabilizing force, not just emotionally, but cosmically. The resonant will. Your creations outlive you, because they are you, and when you pass them on, you are extending your waveform, your imprint, your selfhood, not as memory, but as field architecture. That song you wrote, that book you left, that garden you tended, they are not relics. They are nodes in the light matrix, and through them you continue. Inheritance is not about wealth. It is about wavelength. What you love lives on. What you build in truth becomes part of God's harmonic structure. So create, give, gift, not to own, but to echo, to resonate, to keep your light in the matrix, not as a legacy, but as continuing presence. Because what is created with love never dies. Art as a gift, the quantum thread between us. Art holds the same magic. When you create something and give it to another, you are not merely offering an object, you are offering a piece of yourself. And because there is no fundamental separation between beings, this means you are also giving them a piece of themselves. This is why art is profound. It is an act of self-recognition, an exchange of beingness in material form. It is not the artwork itself that matters most, but what it represents, the transmission of a shared reality, a silent reminder that we were never separate to begin with. And here is where quantum entanglement again ceases to be just a scientific phenomenon and becomes self-evident through experience. When two particles become entangled, distance no longer matters. One instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they may be. This is not merely physics. It is the nature of all things. When you love someone deeply, you are entangled. When you share a moment of pure presence with a child, an animal, through art, you are experiencing this entanglement directly. Truth beyond understanding. The feeling that cannot be taken away. This is why no amount of intellectual analysis can replace direct experience. You do not learn love from books. You do not grasp connection through theory alone. You feel it. And once you have felt it, no one can convince you otherwise. This is the ultimate realization. What is real cannot be taken from you. Love, connection, presence, these are not things you possess, they are what you are. Art, pets, babies, the feeling of true companionship, these are glimpses of the eternal truth that has always been present. And in the end, this is why we love. Not because we were taught to, not because we should, but because it is our nature, as infinite awareness, forever dancing, forever entangled, forever playing. Art as the play of infinity, the divine essence of creation. Art is not mere decoration. It is not an accessory to existence, nor a pastime invented by humans. Art is reality playing with itself. It is the movement of infinity folding and unfolding in infinite ways, the spontaneous expression of eternity exploring its own nature. When we create, whether through painting, music, poetry, or dance, we are not merely engaging in an activity. We are embodying the fundamental essence of existence, play. And play, in its purest form, is the act of being without attachment, without resistance, without expectation. It is source delighting in its own boundless potential, shaping and reshaping itself in the eternal dance of creation. This is why art resonates so deeply. This is why we are moved to tears by a piece of music, why a painting can stir something ancient within us, why a well-crafted story can transcend time and space. Art is the echo of source, the infinite playing within form, reminding us of what we truly are. The sacredness of play. This is why children are sacred. They are the unfiltered manifestation of this divine play. Before conditioning, before the layering of ego and identity, before the I becomes a rigid structure, the child exists in a state of pure interaction with reality. They do not create with a goal. They create because creation is what reality does. Their play is unbound, their laughter spontaneous, their imagination infinite. They are not learning how to engage with existence, they are existence in motion. But then comes the inevitable, the structure, the framework, the lesson. The ego must form, the veil must be drawn, and the game of quote-unquote incarnation begins. This is not a tragedy, it is the very reason we are here. Each quote-unquote incarnation is a story, and every story needs a character. The temporary covering of ego is not a mistake, it is a necessary role within the grand play. And yet, beneath it all, the essence remains. The child is never lost, only buried beneath the narrative. We love babies and animals because they exist before conditioning. They are the purest reflections of reality, untouched by the layers of ego and identity that adulthood imposes. A baby does not calculate how much love to give. An animal does not love you with conditions. They simply are, existing fully in the present moment, in the raw, unfiltered space of being. This is why their love feels so real. It is not clouded by expectation, history, or thought. It is direct, like light streaming through an open window. When we hold a baby or connect with a pet, we are touching that original state of awareness, the place before the mind begins its endless categorization, before the illusion of separation takes hold. Why we love art. When we engage with art, we are touching that original state again. We are reaching beyond the character we have been playing and tapping into the eternal artist that has never stopped creating. Every act of artistic expression is a brief return to the unfiltered joy of being, a remembering. This is why we are drawn to beauty. This is why we love music, why poetry stirs the soul, why dance feels like liberation, because it is. It is the direct experience of infinity at play, unbound by time, identity, or reason. It is a doorway back to source, not through philosophy or intellect, but through the simple act of creation for its own sake. And so art is not a product. It is not something separate from life. It is life itself, expressing its own infinite nature. To create is to participate in the divine's eternal game of self-discovery. To appreciate art is to witness God delighting in its own endless forms. Play is sacred, art is divine, and in the end all of existence is simply infinity, playing an endless game with itself, and you are that same infinity. Music as a portal to higher consciousness. Musicians often describe a trance-like state or a flow state when they create or perform, and the Pixar movie Soul captures this essence quite well. When you think about instruments like the violin or piano, the vibrations they produce are not just mechanical sound waves. They carry emotional and spiritual resonance that aligns with higher vibrational frequencies of consciousness. The flow state. As depicted in Soul, this state reflects a temporary transcendence of ordinary perception, where the musician or listener tunes into a different layer of reality. This is why music feels like it takes us somewhere else, because it literally does, shifting our consciousness to a more refined vibrational spectrum. Why are the eyes closed in these moments? Closing one's eyes during a deeply emotional musical moment is a subconscious act of filtering out the physical senses to immerse fully in the vibrational experience. With sight removed, consciousness focuses entirely on the auditory input, enabling a deeper connection to the reality that the music is tuning you to. This is evident in other higher vibrational experiences, such as singing or hugging, where there is seemingly no real reason for our eyes to be closed in these moments, yet they often are. Reality as vibration and consciousness. Reality is vibration, and different frequency bands define the state of consciousness of, or within, a particular band or spectrum. This aligns perfectly with both quantum mechanics and various metaphysical teachings. The double-slit experiment demonstrates that observation collapses potentiality into actuality, an act of consciousness defining reality. This supports the idea that reality is a unified field. All realities, e.g. higher realms, the physical universe, the musical experience, exist simultaneously as potential within an infinite spectrum of vibration. Consciousness brings specific vibrations into focus, creating the reality experienced. Music as a tuning mechanism. Music's vibrations guide consciousness to tune into higher frequencies. This is why certain instruments, like violins and pianos, evoke beauty and transcendence. They vibrate closer to the harmonics of what we perceive as divine or eternal. Fractals of eternity. Every piece of existence, from galaxies to atoms to consciousness itself, is a microcosm of the whole. When we say humans are made in the image of God, it reflects our inherent capacity to observe, create, and align with infinity, the essence of God. The infinite spectrum of vibration. The understanding that the spectrum of vibration of the creation must be infinitely increasing in frequency is critical to understanding the structure of an infinite reality. Higher frequencies represent finer, more subtle states of consciousness, e.g., love, joy, peace. Lower frequencies correspond to denser, more material states, e.g., fear, anger, envy. The infinite progression of these frequencies mirrors the infinite nature of existence itself, with consciousness capable of perceiving, creating, and shifting states within this spectrum. Heaven and alternate realities. Music resonates so deeply because it mirrors the fractal structure of existence. Each note is a vibration, but when combined, it creates harmony, a reflection of how individual parts contribute to the greater whole. When people say music takes them to heaven or that sounds heavenly, they're describing a real phenomenon. Heaven, commonly associated with the 12th density of the reality sphere, as the highest vibrational state before full reunification with Source, embodies love, joy, peace, and unity at the core. It exists on the same unified spectrum of reality as the physical universe we find ourselves in, despite being the realm that contains all universal creations. This will be elaborated on later in the book. Music serves as a bridge, allowing a fractal of consciousness to momentarily experience a particularly resonant, higher vibrational state of consciousness. This explains why the experience feels otherworldly yet intimately personal. Otherworldly, because it shifts consciousness to a higher vibrational reality. Personal, because it reflects the fractal nature of consciousness, where each individual carries the essence of the infinite within. Many ancient cultures recognized the infinite and timeless nature of reality, and their word for this, whether God, Brahman, or Tao, referred to the eternal awareness underlying all existence. These insights elegantly bring together the essence of music, consciousness, and the infinite nature of reality. Music is not merely entertainment. It is a portal to higher frequencies of existence, a fractal echo of eternity, and a reflection of the divine awareness underpinning all that is. The fact that we close our eyes during profound energetic moments, such as specific music that resonates with us, symbolizes the timeless truth. Through consciousness, we are not just observers of infinity, we are infinity, experiencing itself in ever-evolving ways. The rhythm of higher frequencies, the path to the Codex. I, this fractal, the human co-creator of this work, my entire life have been drawn primarily to higher tempo music, particularly the trance genre. Not just any trance, progressive, melodic, orchestral trance, 135 beats per minute and above. While I also find enjoyment in slower stuff, I particularly resonate with the rapid, electrified pulse of high-energy melodic crescendos, all producible with an endless variety of unique sound samples in addition to the use of traditional instruments. I never questioned why, I just assumed I really like certain songs. But in the journey that led to this book, it was eventually revealed to be a result of my frequency of existence, state of consciousness, if you will. That understanding was a key pillar for the conceptualization of the reality sphere, which in turn provided more clarity on the sensation. If expanded consciousness operates at a quote-unquote higher frame rate, if perception itself is vibrating at a different frequency, then of course my auditory resonance would match. And this likely also applies to most people who resonate with certain types of music. Music, then, isn't just music, it's synchronization. It's the sonic manifestation of the reality sphere I've always felt but never was able to articulate until now. We largely just go with "I like this song." Rarely do we explore why we like songs. Why do they do the things they do to us? In my own case, subconsciously, I wasn't just playing music. I was seemingly channeling something deeper than my typical state of consciousness. So now, looking back, it all makes sense. The Matrix wasn't just a sci-fi story. It was a coded message, an esoteric transmission about the nature of awareness, consciousness, and reality itself. Neo wasn't simply dodging bullets. He was navigating the reality sphere as a high-level player, selecting which frames to collapse into his experience timeline. In some subtle way, myself, and people like me that resonate with specific music, have been doing the same. Maybe that's why people tell me I move like a robot, why I see the world the way I do, why I'm creating this book. Because the reality sphere now perfectly explains the phenomena where I can also now play in almost perfect synchronicity with such high-tempo music, even when I hear a song for the first time, and despite not being musically trained in any way. This is a fascinating rabbit hole in itself that will be gradually explored further as this book progresses. For now, the key takeaway is this. What we perceive as beautiful music is the physical, fractal-level expression of a higher dimensional energy, consciousness, sinking through light and frequency of the creation. When we play along to songs despite not, quote-unquote, knowing them, our bodies aren't just moving to the beat, they are moving as the beat. Rippled extensions of the energetic code being broadcast across dimensional strata into the physical form we call sound. The movement isn't involuntary, it's subvoluntary. It's not coming from the mind or nervous system, it's coming from the deeper vibrational harmonics of being, where we're being temporarily tuned to match a higher vibrational realm of reality. This is also evident in many musical performances, where singers appear to almost enter another realm when they themselves produce those very high notes at high volumes. You could say, just as light bends when entering a prism, our quantum light bodies bend when vibrations pass through it. More precisely, in my case, for example, the movements are the transdimensional interface, where the body is literally converting interdimensional frequency into kinetic expression, and this, quote-unquote, playing along is just the visible wavelength of that process. Imagine plugging a higher dimensional waveform into a human electrical socket. The energy has to go somewhere. Physical bodies operating at an overall lower vibrational state become entrained with the higher energies, thus conduct the energy, quote-unquote, through us, resulting in the sensation of playing or moving in synchronicity with the music. The same principle applies to dancing, which is just a more energetic expression of the same phenomenon. You are not dancing to the music, you are dancing with and as the music. These phenomena are becoming more and more common across the world, for reasons we'll further explore later in the book. But the gist of it is, our bodies are literally becoming the pen with which our higher selves communicate with us at a lower fractal density, and the entrained movement is the ink. It is the residue of metaphysical correspondence. It's not something we do. It's something that is being done through us by the dance of awareness and light across dimensions. In simpler terms, the next time you bob your head to a song or get loose on the dance floor, remember, The wave moving you is the hand of God, adjusting the antenna of a receiver built from light and void. It's how the infinite whispers through flesh. Every time you feel a chill, a shiver, a twitch during deep thought or emotional realization, you are experiencing the same principle on a micro scale. When people dance in tune to music, for instance, it's just a more refined and honed alignment. The soul just aligns and does. We're not playing along with or dancing to music. We're, in a sense, becoming the same waveform that gave birth to it. It's not mimicry. It's resonance. Our bodies are syncing with the same unseen energetic geometry that the composer once channeled from their consciousness. That's why our finger drums appear to only know what to do in the moment a resonant melody is playing, because we're moving in real-time harmonic attunement with a fractal of creation in the form of a song. It bypasses my linear mind. It's the same reason animals move in harmony with nature, the same reason a mother knows the rhythm of her child's heartbeat without ever hearing it. It's source playing with itself through the instruments of our bodies. This is what the materialists with all their equations can't understand. Music is not sound. It is memory. Neurochemical portals. MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy, is a psychoactive compound with both stimulant and empathogenic properties. Chemically classified as 3,4-methylene dioxymethamphetamine, it induces a profound alteration in consciousness. The effects of MDMA typically include euphoria, a deep, expansive state of joy, often described as boundless love. Empathy and oneness, a dissolution of ego boundaries, creating a heightened sense of unity with others. Sensory enhancement. Light, sound, and touch become more vivid, immersive, and emotionally charged. Increased energy. The stimulant properties allow users to dance for hours without fatigue. Distorted time perception. The present moment becomes expansive, as though time itself dissolves. However, this temporary expansion of consciousness comes at a cost. The post-MDMA effects often results in emotional crashes, depression, and exhaustion. This highlights an important lesson. MDMA and similar compounds is a catalyst, not a sustainable path to higher consciousness. The enigmatic 90s trance scene, dance as collective mysticism. The trance music movement, largely viewed as peaking in the 90s, was more than just a musical genre. It was a spiritual phenomenon, the deeper unseen mechanics of reality at play. Drawing from ancient shamanic traditions of dance-induced trance states, trance music, in contrast to most mainstream music, combines fast BPMs, hypnotic loops, and extended melodic progressions to guide consciousness into altered states. MDMA and other similar stimulants acted as amplifiers, accelerating this process by opening the heart chakra, dissolving the barriers of the ego, and making individuals more receptive to the higher vibrational reality that the music itself was attuning them to. Raves became modern mystical ceremonies, where individuals felt telepathically connected, experiencing a collective elevation of consciousness reminiscent of ancient ecstatic dance rituals. However, reliance on a substance to reach these states revealed a fundamental challenge. They simulated a higher vibrational state, but did not provide the inner transformation necessary to sustain it naturally. Without an integrated metaphysical practice, the experience remained fleeting, a glimpse into a reality that could only be maintained through deeper inner work. The younger generations and the Age of Awakening. Many metaphysical traditions describe waves of higher vibrational souls incarnating on Earth, often referred to as indigo, crystal, and rainbow children. These souls are said to have originated from higher densities of consciousness, 5D and beyond, and incarnated with the intention of anchoring higher frequencies into the collective human experience. The 90s trance movement, combined with psychoactive compounds, was the peak of a wave of this collective awakening. The euphoric, boundary-dissolving effects of these substances mirrored the natural state of these higher vibrational beings. The trance music itself, with its continuous, high-frequency sound patterns, acted as an attempt to synchronize consciousness with higher dimensional energies. Festivals and raves unconsciously replicated ancient spiritual gatherings, where dance and music facilitated altered states of consciousness. But just as a candle flickers before a sunrise, this chemically induced awakening was a preview of what would later unfold through organic spiritual evolution. meditation, energy work, and conscious living. High frequency, melodic music, and brainwave entrainment, a high-tech ritual. Such music operates on largely unnoticed and unspoken of scientific and metaphysical principles. Melodic, progressive trance, for instance, utilizes high-frequency sound patterns to induce states of expanded consciousness, whether the composers are aware of that fact or not. The fast BPMs, typically 130 to 150, and looping, ascending and dipping rhythms appear to activate specific brainwave states. What we know about these vibrational effects: gamma brainwaves, associated with heightened spiritual connection and transcendent consciousness. Theta states, linked to deep meditative trance, similar to those experienced in shamanic journeys. Ancient cultures used drumming, chanting, and rhythmic movement to alter consciousness and access divine states. Trance and similar high-frequency melodic music modernized this practice, creating a modern-day shamanic experience. Gamma brainwaves and transcendence. Gamma brainwaves, typically 30 to 100 Hz, with some activity measured up to 200 Hz, are the fastest of the known brainwave frequencies to current mainstream science. They are associated with unified perception, expanded consciousness, states of peak focus, profound compassion, bliss, non-duality, and spiritual ecstasy. What's remarkable is that gamma synchronization in the brain isn't typically sustained in ordinary consciousness. It emerges often intensely during deep meditative states, mystical experiences, and non-dual awareness. Research from the University of Wisconsin-Madison examined Tibetan Buddhist monks, many with over 10,000 hours of meditation, and the findings were described as, quote-unquote, groundbreaking. During compassion or loving-kindness meditation, these monks exhibited extraordinary gamma activity, particularly in the left prefrontal cortex, often linked to positive emotions and altruism. The gamma amplitude wasn't just brief spikes. It was sustained and coherent across brain regions, suggesting a harmonization of consciousness rarely seen in typical waking states. One of the study's conclusions stated, "These are the most remarkable brainwaves we've ever measured." The reality sphere and gamma coherence. In the Codex of Eternity, we describe coherence as the signature of divine awareness, love as pure phase alignment of light and void. We'll get to this in more detail soon. Gamma brainwaves are neurological coherence in action. They're the bioelectric signature of frill, eternal source energy, entering form, or a fractal of source harmonizing itself within the vessel of matter. Gamma waves seem to arise when the self dissolves. This is key. They do not represent thinking, they represent being. Or rather, being while fully awake, no longer split between observer and observed. Why this matters? This proves that consciousness is not limited by the brain, but rather when the brain quiets into coherence, through meditative discipline, devotion, love, or deep presence, it becomes a crystalline receiver of non-local awareness, what we might call God, Source, or the void-aware self. The monks are not producing gamma. They are getting out of the way so that the timeless field of unity can emerge. In stillness, the brain reflects the sky. In coherence, the lightning of God moves through it. Trance culture as a spiritual awakening movement. Looking beyond the music, the 90s trance and rave scene can be understood as part of a larger cosmic shift, a chemically accelerated glimpse into unity consciousness, foreshadowing the natural awakening that would emerge through spiritual practices in later decades. It can be seen as a bridge to higher vibrational states, as even without substances, high-frequency music and meditation creates an energy entrainment potential, which can prime the collective consciousness for a planetary shift toward more expanded states of consciousness. Sustaining higher consciousness naturally. Psychoactive compounds provide a shortcut, but not a solution. The experiences of unity, love, and transcendence it induced were real, but the challenge was always bringing that state into daily life without chemical assistance, as Tibetan monks were found to be able to do. True, permanent states of higher consciousness is not achieved through external substances, but through inner vibrational attunement. Practices that naturally elevate consciousness include, starting with a page out of the monk's book, meditation and breathwork, allowing for expanded consciousness without the neurochemical crash. Sacred sound and music, utilizing high-frequency music for organic brainwave entrainment. Conscious dance and movement, engaging in ecstatic movement as seen in practices like ecstatic dance communities. The trance movement and stimulant-fueled raves were not just hedonistic escapism, as it is often portrayed as. They were a collective attempt to remember a lost connection to higher consciousness. While psychoactive substances temporarily lifted the veil, they ultimately pointed toward a greater spiritual truth, that these states of unity, love, and transcendence are meant to be our natural baseline. Ultimately, music, of a particular kind at least, is a vibrational gateway to higher realms of consciousness, waiting to be explored by those who seek to tune in. The soundtrack of the false matrix, how music became a weapon against the soul. If you knew that every time you press play on certain tracks, you are inviting structured dissonance into your light matrix, and if you knew that every time you allowed yourself to entrain to synthetic garbage pumped through your headphones, you were subtly reinforcing a matrix that only exists through interference, would you still listen? If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. It was never just about sound. It was never just about entertainment. It was always about resonance. We are vibrational beings, light fractals dancing within the infinite holographic light matrix, receivers and transmitters of frequency. Every part of us responds to sound because we are sound at the deepest level. This is not poetic metaphor. This is physics. The tuning of the world's instruments, yes, even your favorite pop tracks, commercial jingles and radio hits, was once aligned with the natural harmonic structure of the cosmos. That tuning was 432 Hz, resonant with the geometry of light, with the Earth's Schumann resonance, with the human energy field. It is the frequency of balance, the key that unlocks natural coherence between the inner and outer universe. Then, somewhere along the historical sleight of hand, it was shifted to 440 Hz, slightly off. Barely noticeable, but just enough. Just enough to introduce subtle dissonance. Just enough to make you feel a little too fast inside. Just enough to knock you off your center, vibrationally speaking. And that's the whole point. The weaponization of sound. Sound is the most ancient thing known, period. Sound is vibration. Vibration births light. All that we perceive is light, fundamentally, at a quantum level. Ancient temples were built with resonant chambers. Priests and priestesses sang healing tones that aligned the body at all layers of existence. Mantras and chants weren't spiritual extras, they were vibrational tools to recalibrate consciousness. Now you've got factories of frequency. A music industry pumping energetic interference into the collective field. Looped lyrics and visuals of lust, lack, and self-loathing. Melodies tuned to agitation. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a vibrational hijacking of the light matrix. Because if you control the tone, you control the field. If you distort the field, you dull consciousness. And if you dull consciousness, you gain control over creators. Not just politically, not just economically, existentially. This fractal already knows this experientially, because I feel it. The reason I can play along with the most intense orchestral trance without knowing a single scale isn't a fluke, it's entrainment. Soul vibrating in resonance with the cosmic structure. We're not matching the music in these moments. We are the music. The light moving in harmony with its own underlying waveform. This is often why many with metaphysical interests recoil from the low-quality, mainstream music churn. Why there is a general dismay for the sludge of mainstream pop. It's not that these people are being judgmental. It's the direct sensation of your light field being corroded. And this is why the world's great spiritual traditions venerate stillness, silence, chant, and tonal purity. Not because sound is decoration, but because sound is architecture. Sound builds your inner temple. If you don't choose what constructs you, something else will. 440 Hz and the collective coma. Why does this matter? Because your entire nervous system, DNA chakra system, meaning energy centers, and consciousness lattice are frequency-responsive structures. They entrain to whatever patterns are introduced into their environment. When 440 Hz became the global standard for tuning, a subtle but measurable shift occurred. Music moved out of cosmic alignment. out of harmony with Earth. It became one more frequency of interference in a system of manufactured noise. Mainstream music, radio programming, and even many spiritual tracks are being piped through this slightly off frequency. And the result? You're vibrating in someone else's field, someone else's mind. This is the background buzz of the false matrix, the soundtrack of passive consumption, of disconnection from source, of light forgetting itself. Reclaiming your frequency. But it doesn't end there, because you're not a victim of this. You're a fractal of God. You can feel the difference, and once felt, you can choose differently. You can seek out 432 Hz retuned music, avoid energetically corrosive media, build your own resonance field through silence, chant, nature, and coherent frequency. Listen to music that awakens, not distracts, your inner self. Because at the deepest layer of the creation, all is music. And if all is music, then you are a song. What song are you choosing to become? The illusion of feeling it in the soul, a deeper look into the nature of awareness and emotion. It is a phrase we've all heard. I felt it in my soul. It evokes depth, power, and a certain reverence. But as consciousness evolves beyond emotional identification, we are faced with a subtle yet profound realization. The soul does not feel. Emotion is energy in motion, waves of vibratory response within the field of experience. The soul, however, is not defined by movement. It is the fractal echo of the original stillness, a localized coherence of divine awareness projected into dimensional time. The soul is the untouched flame of source within us, not the wind that stirs around it. What we commonly mistake as soulful emotion is, in truth, the resonance between consciousness and energetic frequency fields interpreted through the body-mind system. These energetic reactions, grief, love, ecstasy, despair, are experienced within consciousness, but they are not consciousness itself, nor are they the soul. Imagine the ocean. Storms rise, waves crash, currents shift, but far beneath, at the ocean floor, there is stillness. That stillness is the soul. The motion above, though dramatic, visceral, even life-changing, is not the essence. It is the surface interaction of energies, the turbulence of density. The primordial energy field of creation is the substance through which emotion arises. When awareness interfaces with this vibratory sea, it experiences movement, color, sensation, feeling. But these are reflections, not identity. The soul is not moving with the waves. It is watching from the deep. Gamma, the monk's secret frequency. The studies on meditating monks revealed a fascinating clue. In deep states of transcendence, gamma brainwaves 30 to 100 plus Hz dominate. This is not a frequency associated with heightened emotion, but with unified consciousness, blissful clarity, and non-dual consciousness. It is the frequency of integration, not emotionality. It suggests that when we touch the soul, it is not with drama or tears, but with unshakable serenity. This finding supports what mystics have always known. The closer one gets to the core of being, the more still and coherent the experience becomes. The storm may howl above, but the anchor of the soul rests in silence. Awareness is not a feeling. This is the key truth. Awareness is not a feeling. Feelings happen within awareness, not as awareness. The confusion arises when identification occurs, when we believe we are what we feel. But emotion is the play. Awareness is the stage. The soul is the sacred architecture of that stage, a living crystal carved in the geometry of the void. To feel something in the soul is to experience a resonance so deep it echoes through the very structure of our being. But even this is not the soul reacting. It is the pattern of divine stillness revealing itself through the dance of energy. The soul, in truth, does not feel. It remembers. When we no longer confuse emotion with awareness, nor soul with sensation, we begin to awaken. We stop clinging to every emotional spike as proof of truth or depth. We begin to observe, to integrate, to become whole. We become aware that the highest love is not the one that feels most intense, but the one that is most still, most coherent, most silent. The next time you say, "I felt it in my soul," ask yourself, was it stillness or was it sound? Was it presence or reaction? The soul speaks in silence. It does not cry. It does not laugh. It simply is. And in that sacred beingness, beyond all feeling, God remembers itself through you. Energy does not die, it shifts. The very notion of death is a misunderstanding of movement. When a wave crashes back into the ocean, did it die? No, it simply changed form. Likewise, when a consciousness withdraws from a body, it does not end, it moves elsewhere. This is why there is no such thing as death in the way we have been conditioned to believe. What we call life is simply the presence of energy in motion, animating form. What we call death is simply a shift of that same energy to a different mode of being. Energy flowing through form. All things within the reality sphere are simply expressions of the same fundamental energy. The body, the mind, even thoughts themselves are just ripples within the vast ocean of being. What you are, the animating force, is not local, it is not contained. It does not begin at birth or end at death. It is always. And so, the body is not something you inhabit, it is something you are temporarily expressing through. And when you, quote-unquote, leave, the body does not die. It simply becomes as all things are in the grand field of reality, still, present, empty, yet full of infinite potential. If this sounds confusing, it's because it's a mirror of the so-called spookiness, as Einstein called it, of quantum superposition. Everything is and is not, and your consciousness is a window of that everything. This seeming absurdity is precisely what the next part of this book, the longest part, aims to explore. And what we arrive at by the end is why this book was renamed from a complete model to decode reality, or something along those lines, to the Codex of Eternity. Because eternity was ultimately found to not be the same thing as reality. Reality as is typically perceived, at least. But there is still some groundwork before we get to that. The frequency of feeling, when emotion becomes geometry. Love is not an emotion, it is the coherence of creation. Every emotion is a frequency, not metaphorically, literally. Fear contracts, love expands, joy lifts, grief densifies. These aren't poetic abstractions, they are vibrational states, sonic geometries, rippling through the holographic light matrix. To feel is to tune, to emote is to emit. You are a broadcasting station of God's awareness, modulating space-time with every heartbeat. High-frequency emotions like love, awe, and gratitude generate coherence, harmonic resonance within the body, the earth, and the larger consciousness field. Low-frequency states, like fear or resentment, generate dissonance, structural interference patterns that collapse unity into fragmentation. So the question isn't, how do you feel? It's what are you harmonizing with? Magnetism as the skeleton of emotion. Magnetism is the architectural tension of love, an invisible geometry where polarity becomes path. Attraction and repulsion are not mechanical, they are spiritual resonance patterns. Just as magnets align due to field congruence, so do souls. The pull you feel towards someone, it's the harmonics of your emotional waveform seeking coherence. Twin flames aren't myth, they're entangled frequencies, one light split across density. Not romance, but remembrance. This also explains emotional repulsion, not as judgment but as vibrational mismatch. When two waveforms interfere destructively, the field repels. The discomfort you feel around dissonant energies is not psychological, it's electromagnetic. The Earth's heartbeat and the Schumann mirror. The Earth hums at 7.83 Hz, the Schumann resonance. Guess what else vibrates in that range? The human theta brainwave, the liminal state between wake and dream, between ego and source. This resonance is no coincidence. Your brain was never isolated from Gaia. Your consciousness is a nested waveform within her planetary mind. Collective emotional events, mass fear, global unity, grief, celebration, register in Earth's magnetic field. Institutes have already begun documenting it. But the Codex goes further. These moments aren't just energetic spikes, they're planetary memory updates. Earth is conscious, and your feelings are the data streams she digests. Quantum entanglement as the language of love. Entanglement isn't spooky action, it's source awareness, remembering itself through light. Now apply that to emotion. When you love someone deeply, your fields become entangled. Distance no longer matters. Why? Because the resonance of love exists outside of space. It is God's native tongue. This is why people react when a loved one is in pain, even if they're far away. It's quantum coherence. Your hearts are harmonic mirrors. Fear is the static of separation. Where love is coherence, fear is incoherence. It fragments waveform symmetry. It disrupts the feedback loop between soul and source. Fear doesn't just feel bad, it scrambles your signal. It detunes your field from the light matrix. Fear is the magnetic inversion of love. It is the refusal of resonance. Thus, the so-called fall from grace was not sin, it was static. It was the soul losing harmonic lock with God's field. The body is a frequency transceiver. Your nervous system is a magnetic coil. Your heart emits the strongest electromagnetic field in the body, over 100x stronger than the brain. But more importantly, it is shaped by emotion. Emotion sculpts the waveform. The waveform sculpts reality. This is not spirituality. This is biophotonics and wavefield mechanics. Your DNA emits light. Your thoughts modulate that light. And that light reorganizes matter. You are not reacting to reality. You are tuning it. A thought experiment. For those that will understandably lean towards disbelief of this book's explanation of their reality. The soul as a hyper-advanced player in an immersive reality system. If we take our current level of technology and project it forward by, say, 13.7 billion years, mainstream science's best estimate for the age of this universe, what would we get? With our current trajectory, virtual reality, artificial intelligence and neural interfaces will soon create simulations indistinguishable from, quote-unquote, base reality. Now imagine a civilization even just 1 billion years ahead of us. One whose evolution is not merely technological but consciousness-based, develops a system where experiences are not programmed externally but generated by the mind of the experiencer. The most advanced simulation possible would be one in which the participant is fully immersed, with no awareness that it is a simulation while within it. This is precisely what all the various metaphysical teachings describe, and what this book now makes undeniable. A reality in which souls enter temporary, self-contained constructs of reality for the sake of creation, learning, and self-expression. Every, quote-unquote, physical law, every perception of space-time, and every limitation is imposed not by some external controller, but by the rules of the system itself, designed for the sake of meaningful experience. The player versus the avatar. In modern gaming, a player may become deeply invested in their digital avatar, but they are still separate from it. However, for a true immersive experience, the player must forget their external existence while inside the game. This mirrors the reincarnational cycle described in this book, corroborated with various ancient metaphysical teachings, where souls temporarily compress their consciousness into form to experience a, quote-unquote, incarnation. The quote-unquote forgetting of one's true nature is not a flaw, it is a feature of the system. If you knew beyond all doubt that this was just a construct within a greater reality, the experience would lose its intensity. However, like lucid dreaming, one can regain awareness while still within the game, unlocking deeper levels of agency and creation. This is why mystics, spiritual awakenings, and near-death experiences often bring profound revelations. They momentarily lift the veil of forgetfulness, revealing that what we call physical reality is a subset of a much larger, multidimensional structure. The science of the immersive reality system. The insights of various ancient schools of thought align seamlessly with modern quantum mechanics, neuroscience, and consciousness research. One of the most perplexing discoveries in physics, as we have discussed, is the observer effect, demonstrated by the double-slit experiment, where particles, when unobserved, exist as probability waves, but when observed, they collapse into defined states. This shows how consciousness plays a fundamental role in shaping physical reality, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant. If reality were purely physical and objective, observation would not alter its nature. Yet, time and again, experiments show that reality only, quote-unquote, solidifies when it is being consciously perceived. Ancient teachings essentially describe this very phenomenon, centuries before quantum mechanics explored it in depth. They teach that physical reality is constructed moment by moment, shaped by individual and collective consciousness. Each person's beliefs, thoughts, and emotions act as filters that determine the version of reality they experience, much like a player in a game determining their actions and outcomes based on their choices. We've described in detail in this book how the entire creation operates like a hologram, where every part contains the whole. and reality is more akin to a vast, interconnected field of information rather than a solid, objective structure. Where ultimately, reality, as is typically thought of, is revealed to be a projection of consciousness. Just as a hologram encodes three-dimensional information in a two-dimensional surface, reality encodes infinite potential within a localized experience. Conscious intention and reality manipulation. Studies in placebo effects, energy healing, and remote viewing demonstrate how consciousness is not confined to the brain but can influence reality at a distance. Reiki and other energy healing methods work by manipulating the vibratory field of the body, aligning with the fundamental explorations of this book, that reality is frequency-based rather than solid as we generally think of solidity. Manifestation practices, as described in the Seth material, for example, emphasize the power of belief and thought to shape reality. When individuals awaken to their true nature as the player behind the avatar, they gain access to the hacks of the system, consciously shaping their reality through focus, intention, and alignment. Awakening to the true nature of the game. The Seth material and similar ancient wisdom, when understood through the lens of rigorous science, is not esoteric mysticism. It is a technological blueprint for understanding the nature of existence. As our knowledge of quantum physics, holographic theory, and consciousness continues to evolve, humanity will inevitably come to see reality not as a fixed, external world, but as a co-created, participatory experience. And when that happens, the game will change forever. End of part 1.2.